Welcome to another conversation with Maria, aka Mama Goose. The topic today is cows, a cow specifically, a dairy cow, name of Cookie, hence the episode name, hopefully. That really is my crowning achievement already of Cookies and Cream.
It's a good title.
Thank you. So first, not every family out there, including even homesteader families, have dairy cows. You have one.
Yes.
Why? And this, maybe we should have a little miniature segment based on the first episode called What Were You Thinking? In which you share with the people what you were thinking about a given farming decision.
Sometimes there's not a lot of thought involved and it just happens.
Well, that's the second segment is
Sure.
What did you fail to think about? Anyway, yeah, so why get a dairy cow, in short?
Well, I mean, for the milk, obviously.
Well, some people, will purchase milk from a purveyor of some kind, perhaps even someone else with a cow. So is it just more of it and more immediate access is the thought here for getting, again, your actual own dairy cow?
Yeah, the quantity would be nice because we have 4 kids. So a family of 6, I was buying like 4 gallons of milk a week. And since we live an hour away from like the big box stores, that's kind of a long haul to do the grocery stores. And also like wanting to be really self-sufficient on our own so that we could be that provider if we needed to for other people, but also for our family.
Great. So much for the reasons for getting a dairy cow generally, but were you in the market for a particular kind? And did you get the one that you wanted?
A friend of ours had an A2 Guernsey. We wanted an A2 cow. It didn't matter what breed it was, but Guernseys are, I think, pretty rare in the United States. So it was kind of a special thing to have Cookie.
Are the cows graded? Did I hear an A2 in there?
A2 stands for the kind of milk proteins that are in a cow's milk. So like a human is A2. It's just a type of, I think it's called a lactoprotein. And in Holsteins and like commercial grade milk, most cows in the United States are A1. Scientifically, there's a lot going on, but I guess what is recommended is that you drink milk that is most similar to human milk. So any A2 variety animal would be ideal. People who have lactose intolerance reactions to milk is a lot largely due to ingesting A1 protein milk, which is harder for your body to digest.
Now, I think I was there the day that Cookie arrived.
Yes, you were.
Did she acclimate pretty fast?
It was sort of a learning curve for all of us. So a cow before she gives birth for the first time is considered a teenager. And so she was real rambunctious. She also is a little bit of a princess, which makes her a little pushy and stubborn. And so there are a few times where she would test her boundaries with Hank and me and get out a couple times trying to explore. But for the most part, things got easier as she was more comfortable with us. And definitely since we had more space than where she currently was, it was kind of nice for her to like get out and stretch her legs and just sort of be a cow.
As all cows so desire to be, except for Ferdinand, of course. What's the poundage, actually?
Yeah, well,
1,000 pounds or so?
Cookie is considered a standard cow, which means she is over 43 inches tall at the shoulder. So she's actually kind of a bigger cow than you would normally see in our area. I'm 5'5", and when she's standing next to me, her shoulders are pretty much like at my head level or a little bit lower. And yes, she's about 1,000 pounds full grown, and she's quite long. I'd say she was like 7 to 8 feet long or something like that. So she's a big animal.
1,000-pound teenage diva.
Who's very fast and has horns.
Calls for a delicate touch,
It's a
I'm
good
sure.
combination.
Talk about some of the early adjustments or lessons that you learned or were sort of forced to learn.
So we learned very quickly that cows are very good at jumping, which isn't something that I had thought was possible for such a large animal. But anything that's at nose height or lower, she can hurdle. And cows go into heat every 21 days. So whenever she went into heat, she would jump her fence if she could like nudge the wires down, and she would jump it to try and get to the cows on the other side of our property.
Eligible bulls in the area.
Even if there aren't any bulls, she just
Local
wants to get out
singles.
somewhere, and she's hollering and bellowing, and all the cows in the area like get lined up on the fence line, just watching her and waiting. Also, like, and then we had to teach her like how to walk on a line so we could lead her places, and we found out that you can move them if you direct their nose, which is why sometimes you see bulls with like the ring around their nose. You can grab them by their nose, and it's a really sensitive spot.
You bet it's
and they'll follow
sensitive.
you.
Goodness. Also, sorry, when you say walk
Right.
on a line, so what comes to my mind is walk in a straight line. That's not what you mean, is it?
Oh no, I mean like on a leash, like a lead line. Yeah.
Whose job was that? Was it you and Hank both?
No, I couldn't. I'm okay with getting the lead on her, but she's so strong, and Hank really is the only person who has the body weight to kind of push her around. Even if she just sort of flicks her head, if you're not waiting, she'd yank me off balance. Oh, I was gonna say, because cows have really sensitive noses, like I mentioned, even though the regular fencing was kind of something that she would try and jump, when we first set up the electrical fence, she touched the line once and did not like it. And ever since, she hasn't gone back to it. So actually, they're quite easy to train.
Talk about how butterscotch came to be. What is the process for starting with a dairy cow and ending up with a calf?
Yes. So we got Cookie when she was 2 years old, which is when they're fully mature, fully grown. But you don't get milk from a cow until the cow gives birth. So we had to figure out how to get our Guernsey bred to have her baby so that we could also have milk. Because she's a rare breed, and because we wanted to ensure that if she had a heifer calf, a girl cow, that it would also have the same sort of A2 pedigree. Like, we couldn't just rent a bull or bring Cookie over to someone that had a herd of steer or a herd of cows to do it the natural way. We spent some time researching, trying to find a great potential
Do you call them a stud? I know that's like the
which
horse
was-
term.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think you call it a stud, a bull stud, and that made some very interesting Google histories on my.
I don't want to
computer
see
for
your
a
ads.
while. The dad for Butters is named Alvin, and he's from a farm out in, I think, Michigan. So they sent us a bunch of bull straws containing some samples, and our vet came. We were given the job of providing all like shots and hormones to get Cookie ready, and then the vet came and did the insemination. 20 days later, we took a blood test and found out we were going to get a calf in July, which was very exciting.
And that was, as you just referenced, Butters, which is short for butterscotch. Yes, the christening of both Cookie and Butterscotch, was that done by the children?
No, Cookie was named Cookie before we got her. The kids wanted Buttercup if it was a girl, or Butterscotch if it was a boy. It was going to be Butters either way.
By the way, I have to note here that I tried to get going the reference to any of Cookie's enclosures as the cookie jar, just for poetry reasons.
I know. I'll have to make a sign.
Oh, yeah. That'll be great for the eventual petting zoo. So now you have Butters, you have milk. Let's get into the milk here. How much are you getting? Talk about what you do with it. Just introduce us to the output.
We do a thing called milk sharing, or calf sharing. And it's the only reason why we were okay with getting a cow. Because, everyone says like, oh, if you get a milk cow, like you're stuck at your farm like twice a day, every day, like you can't go outside of the schedule. But with milk sharing or calf sharing, you have a lot more flexibility because the calf takes whatever milk that you're not going to use. So we milk once a day in the morning. We get about 2 gallons of milk, 1.5 to 2 gallons, depending on how hungry Butters is and how much Cookie holds back. And then he basically nurses on her all day long whenever he wants to, until we separate them at night to make sure that we get something in the morning.
Butters is helping you, moderate your milk supply in a manner that matches your needs.
Yeah, right. And actually, it works out really well because sometimes my husband has to go out of town for work, and I can't do the milking all the time because I have the kids that are very eager to help, but sometimes they make things more difficult. And so on those days, like, we just don't separate them at night, and Butters will eat all the milk all night long. And that's why he's nice and
Yes,
chonky
I was going
right
to say
now.
earlier, like, I didn't realize that Butters is a small version of that.
Yeah, he's about 6 months old, but he's a pretty big cow. He's probably the size of a lot of Angus steer that are around the neighborhood
Wow.
now. The thing about milk cows, naturally, most animals around this time would have weaned off their babies, but because a milk cow has been bred to produce so much milk for as long as they're being milked, they never naturally wean off their calves. And so as long as the calf is there, they'll continue letting them nurse.
Speaking of milking the cow, what is that like? What do you do? Does it take a particular artistry or technique?
I guess it is a technique that you kind of have to learn, but it's not anything difficult. We have what's called a stanchion, which is kind of just like a big stand that Cookie steps into, and we have a headlock on it that if we wanted to keep her head from moving around, we could, and a back lock so that she can't just back up and escape when she wants to. And that's where we milk her. Although you can go out and just sit on a bucket out in whatever field they are in and milk them too. That's entirely possible.
They could just decide to leave, though.
I mean, okay, so cows, once they've had calves, are very docile. So like when I was saying that, like, Cookie was like this rambunctious teenager when we got her. And then the minute she had her baby, she was very calm and very sweet and very gentle. So I think there's a joke in there, but I don't want to say it.
Certainly I can't.
So as far as milking goes, most of the time people just do like one person milks. But if I can get myself out of bed early enough, like, my husband and I milk together, like one on each side. And we have just little like stools from Walmart, or you can use an overturned bucket. And I take one half of the teats and he takes the other. It reminds me of, like, if you have like a bag of frosting or whatever, and you're trying to, or the toothpaste, and you're trying to get the last bit of it, you pinch off the top of one end, curl your fingers down to just squeeze every last drop out, and you just repeat that motion over and over again until nothing else comes out.
Do you get like hand
anymore.
cramps?
Oh yeah, the first few times we had super sore hands because it's just, muscles that you
Right.
don't really use all that often in any other setting. But now it's pretty doable. I think it took us a few months.
Would you say that listeners, if they are considering getting a dairy cow, should start frosting a lot of cakes as a way to prepare? It's one method. It's some of the great advice we offer.
That sounds fun.
Now, there are a couple, I think, sort of fun cow science facts that I was hoping you could discuss here. One is the retention of milk, and the second is what happens if a dairy cow like licks your hand. So if you could take those in turn.
Okay, so cows have this unique ability where they can hold back milk for their calf. So in the morning when Cookie gets in her stanchion, she kind of like listens for Butters, and he's usually right behind her looking very forlornly at us as we set up our buckets. And so we'll milk, and we usually get about 2 gallons, and then at the end of it, you're not getting a single drop of milk, and we let her out. And then Butters runs over and he latches on, and you just see this frothy milk mustache, like she still had a full udder left. And so, yeah, they can hold back as much milk as they can for their baby. And actually, the hind milk is the stuff that's super creamy and rich. So I'm a little jealous of all the butter that Butters is getting.
What about the other one?
Right. It kind of works the same way as like human milk when babies are nursing on their mothers, but so there's this transfer of immunity properties between like a mother and a baby. And so obviously that happens when Butters nurses on Cookie. But the same thing can happen if we let Cookie lick us, like our hand, or I think it's recommended to do your face, because then you sort of get a closer, more personal
That's too
touch
much
between the two of you.
Uh-huh.
It's a little sandpapery. I don't particularly enjoy it. But yeah, if you do that, if she is like really close, like physically, and is able to taste the biome of your skin or whatever, like her body will tailor its milk in the same way that a mother's milk would for the needs of your human family. And so the milk gets better and better for your family the closer and more time you spend together.
Wow. Now, the milk, of course, is the primary output of a cow. But if you're on a farm, there's another cow output that helps a lot, particularly in the garden. I'm being delicate about this, but would you like to talk about the manure?
It's the black gold. Like, you need it. Yeah, cows are grazing animals. They have those 4 stomachs and they chew grass basically all day. And their stomachs don't digest grass in the same way that like humans digest their own food. So instead of just like breaking it down into just straight waste, it's a fermented kind of food mass that comes out the other end. So actually, it's kind of gross, but it's healthy for, you know, the ground, obviously, because people use it as compost. But also, we've discovered that our pigs really like it and our dogs do too. And at first, I thought, I was like, that's disgusting. I have to stop. But we read that there's a lot of amino acids and minerals that are in the manure that is really beneficial to the animals that like to ingest that kind of stuff.
You know, the number of things on a farm that are simultaneously like gross, but also it's part of the circle of agriculture.
Yeah, we collect her manure in her pen. Like, it gets mixed in with the straw that she kind of tosses around, and it makes amazing compost. Like, you put it on the pile, and that pile is steaming hot within 10 minutes.
You've glossed over something there. The pile of what? And why is it steaming?
Oh, our compost pile. Yes. Okay. So we put our, you know, you take normal poop and it's whatever the environmental temperature is, right? And then you put it onto a compost pile and mix it with a lot of different other like greens and waste things, that organic matter that you're getting away. And the bacteria that's in there like start to eat and break down all the material into like that rich compost that you use in your garden. And in that process, they heat up the pile. So it gets quite hot. And actually, like, it could start a fire if you're not careful. When it's done being hot in the pile, as it's called, and it's no longer active, then it's safe to put on your garden. And it is incredibly rich in nutrients for whatever it is that you're planting.
I think the last thing to tackle here, we've gotten to know a lot about Cookie's manifold contributions to the homestead, but I feel like it'd be good to touch a bit more on Cookie herself. Just how would you describe her?
She's a really good mom. A lot of people worry like when any animal gives birth, you kind of worry like, will they be able to take care of their baby? Will they have some sort of maternal instinct? Because sometimes that doesn't happen. You have to step in. But Cookie was amazing. When Butters was born, she leapt up within a second and was so happy. Like, you could see her eyes get huge, and she was just sort of romping around and licking this like wet little bundle on the ground. And she was so happy, and she's been really attentive ever since. Like, she makes sure he's right by him. Now he's sort of old enough, and like when he's getting really annoying, she kind of pushes him off her and like leaves. I
Who's got the teenager now?
Exactly. She makes very similar facial expressions to what I imagine I look like during the day. But yeah, she's very maternal, which I thought was really surprising. Like, you can hear the different kind of moos she uses to call Butters versus like when she's hollering at Hank or me or the kids. Like, it's a different, like, sweeter sort of maternal sound, and it was really touching to see her kind of transform that way.
Yeah, that was very sweet. You referenced just now she'll moo differently depending on the audience, the children being among those audiences. Yeah. Talk a bit about the kids and Cookie. What's the back and forth of the relationship there?
Yeah, well, when we first got her, we were a little worried and we were very cautious because like she's not an aggressive animal. Even when she was a rambunctious sort of like teenage type cow, she wasn't intentionally mean. But she does have horns and she's 1,000 pounds. So like if she steps on your foot, it's gonna hurt. You know?
Has this happened to your foot, Maria, at any point?
My hand.
Your hand. Oh, even better.
Yeah. So she wasn't dangerous in her personality, but just sort of we had to be cautious because of her size and the momentum, you know, when she's moving. But my 4-year-old would just stand next to her petting the cow, like while she was chewing grass. She kind of got knocked a little bit once or twice when she wasn't quite paying attention, but I think she was aware of the children and who they were in relation to her. Like they have sort of like a herd, they have the herd mentality. So once they recognize like, oh, you're my family, even though you look a little weird, then she kind of is careful around them to a degree. Like before we got her set up in her electrical fencing, she'd kind of get out and just end up on our front porch, and the kids would be out picnicking, and she'd just sort of come over and sniff their heads and get them lick their hair and stuff and kind of ruin the picnic. But she wasn't mean. She was just big. When we first got Cookie, she was the only cow on our property, so it was really important to her to have the kids and us around her or within like eyesight pretty regularly, because we were her family essentially at that point. And now she's got Butter, so she doesn't really care about us. But she recognizes people. And so actually, if like a stranger she doesn't know comes like around her, like when we're milking or something, like she gets very antsy and anxious because it's like a stranger suddenly.
Well, this is making me think back to the times when I've been around her when there's not an electric fence between us. And I think the closest I've ever gotten, aside from milking, was just in the main yard by the swing and maybe like 4 feet away. And, despite the like, I'm aware of the, well, she's actually very gentle and, don't do anything sudden. It's pretty discomforting to see a massive animal right there. So I hope she also considers me part of the herd and that I've been around enough.
Oh, I'm sure she does now, yeah.
Also, I fraternize with the other herd, so
there you go.
That should.
Wait, what's the other? Oh, the kids.
Yes, your own herd. You're of course taking the milk, and you are drinking the milk, but you also do a lot of other things with the milk. Yes.
So we make cheese, we make yogurt, we also churn butter with the cream that we collect, and I'm trying to do sour cream, and everyone says it's super easy, but I keep messing it up. So that's sort of been frustrating. But also like, the kids drink about a half gallon to a gallon a day all day long. And then if we have any left over after that, we share it with our friends and family. So our fridge is always full, but never bursting.
Well, look at you using the term fridge in singular as if you don't have several. There's a milk fridge, is there not?
The milk fridge, yes. The milk fridge is full.
One last thing, if you would like to learn more about, and not just learn about, but follow Cookie in her Silver Goose Farm adventures and Butters now.
And she's a celebrity.
Yes. An influencer. Truly.
Guru.
You can follow her on Instagram at The Diary Cow. When I was looking at the blog post, the original one about Cookie to prepare for this discussion, I was reminded of how that started. And it's that if you are writing about a dairy cow, no offense to your keyboard or you, but you will eventually write diary instead of dairy. And so sure enough, quote, I was regularly told not to get a diary animal if I ever wanted a life, unquote. And so reading that, I thought, oh, how funny, a cow with a diary. And the epistolary Instagram journey of Cookie was born soon after.
That's a good
I'm
word.
also going to put on my word of the day hat here and say epistolary means just relating to letters, which could also be, certainly in the biblical sense, be referred to as epistles.
Yeah.
Hence, an epistolary novel is one where it's just people sending letters back and forth, and the letters are the chapters. And so each Instagram post is just a diary entry from Cookie or Butters, and it's a lot of fun. So you can follow it there. Okay, I think that'll do it for us. That'll do it for this episode.
Thanks for interviewing me.
I mean, you're welcome. Thanks for being here. Thanks, everyone. You can learn more at silvergoosefamilyfarm.com or follow that on Instagram, Silver Goose Family Farm. Great. Okay. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.